Okay, it's day 86. This is part one. We're up on the pinky keys of the piano. Day 88 was the famous Cy Hirsch day and the famous last note of the song threat. So, anyway, got a couple more days here, hopefully. So, everyone's excited about this down here. Hello, George. This is Q coming out at the end, and he says, Hello, George. Now, who do I think Q is? Again, I don't normally weigh in until I get some evidence, and I do have evidence now that there are some pictures at the White House, that there is some XM information from the White House. Now you say, well, a lot of people go on tour there. There's just some things that Q wouldn't know unless he was in the West Wing. Now there's a lot of people in the West Wing, I think 400 some in the executive office pool there. So, but I think it's Dan Scavino because he's the social media chairman. He would be running this. If Trump's running it, he's running it through Dan Scavino. But I'm going to get back to that. And I want to talk about geo-collaboration. Geo-collaboration is kind of what we do. This is, if you don't remember this, I'll go back here one slide. If you don't remember Osbaldo, we're going to call him Where is Osbaldo, or Oswald. I like Where is Osbaldo, but he creates this command and control system for chatting like we're doing. And what his basic premise is maps inform everything. There's all these dimensions of looking at information, but around a map, it's kind of like generals standing around a map. It's much more, it brings the conversation together in a much more informative way. And this is his presentation talking about that at Johns Hopkins, and this is who Peter Stokes' son, Devin Stokes, is meeting with, as well as his daughter-in-law. And there's several meetings with this Osbaldo. Where is Osbaldo? And then he dies a little bit later on. But anyway, they talk about this capability of having these chat rooms around different points of interest. And this is command and control, enhanced chat. You can see it's a very much a military or maritime interdiction environment. Now this, if there wasn't such a strong connection to Devin Stokes, this wouldn't be of interest. But it obviously is if you have a military or surveillance application. Okay, now this was developed a while ago, as you can see here, and this is at the Advanced Physics Labs in Laurel, Maryland, which I've been to. So just wanted to talk about that and use that. Q also came out and talked about Mezvinsky, and I'll talk about that in a second, about how his father was a Ponzi schemer and his mother was a politician. So we'll get there. Very briefly, this 13th district that she was a rep in, his mother was Bob Casey's now the senator, and Pat Toomey is the other senator from Pittsburgh, and this Brendan Boyle is currently a young guy, currently the member 13. And back then, Penn 13 didn't go all the way to the river. So people think, oh, well, there was no port there. It couldn't have been of interest to Hillary. Well, if you go back in time, it actually did. Penn 13 went down all the way to the river here. Oops, wrong way. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Now let's jump to the other side, which is the hedge fund that he created. Not the father had the $10 million Ponzi scheme in the U.S., but the son, Edwin Mezvinsky, or Chelsea's husband, I can't remember his first name, Mezvinsky, had this Greek hedge fund. And I had said, this goes way back, more than a year. Geez, I want to say almost a year and 30 days, where Neil Brown, the husband of Eric Braverman, was talking about he's very good friends of David Petraeus, and probably Petraeus is number one man in terms of expertise in pipelines. He wanted this trans-Turkey pipeline to cut off the Russians. The Russians and Gazprom and the Ukraine up here depend a lot on supplying Germany and the rest of the countries in Europe with gas. This plan was, hey, we'll have this stuff coming from Azerbaijan over here, from the Baku, and all this gas that we've picked up here by knocking over all these stands. We'll bring the gas through here, and this will be the southern route. This is going to be Neil Brown's southern route. And then the other one is the Trans-African pipeline. You do all these topples across the top shelf of Africa, and you can see that this is a short point here across the two. Now there's a Transmed pipeline this way, but you start a new hedge fund in order to have an alternative to provide competition. So Task Force and I were talking about that last night. Who is Neil Brown? If you don't remember, I talked about this a long time ago. I said these Frank Juster partners, there's these 1,100 hidden Clinton donors, and these are the types of things they invest in. Once you get the rat line, then you can bring in the peacekeeping forces. Then all the other rat lines seem to come along with it. It seems like it's the first rat line, the primary rat line you want to set up. And then Neil Brown, I even predicted, because he was so close to Petraeus and so close to Kissinger, I even predicted he'd be president. So you can see I thought a lot about Neil Brown. And going back all the way to day 57 here, which is over a year ago, I've talked about Neil Brown, and this is he's meeting the foreign minister. But anyway, this is the pipeline, and Neil Brown wrote the southern route for this pipeline. Now, a couple of other things, switching gears quickly. Here is just looking at a text and a release, and I'm going to show how adding the geographic collaboration really adds a lot to it. Here just is a Virginia auto shop man, and he is not paying his employees, and okay, that's all there is to it. If you read a little further, it's Ashburn, Virginia. It's Foreign Service Auto. It's in McLean, Virginia, which is the head of the CIA, where it's based, the George Center, the George Bush Center. And he's not paying his taxes and so forth. And this just has that signature of, we're going to have a business, we're going to take all the profits, and we're not going to pay any of the expenses. That just has that CIA signature. But if you map it, then it becomes much more interesting, because here's Ashburton, here's where we were over at Dulles Airport, this is close to Dulles Green, here's where Imran lived over here, all the things that we charted out. Here's the volcano park, the animal park over here. All the things we had kind of charted out puts it right in that kind of Cassandra mix. It's not an obvious Cassandra person, but the first indictment that came down in this series of indictments, that when I heard Mark Lambert's name, was for a guy named Motley, and he was also doing the same thing, where he was armoring these cars up for these diplomats going overseas. Again, just signatures, but I see kind of this repeating pattern. Okay, switching quickly now to supposedly was married to her while she was a student here at the University of Maryland at College Park. Okay, so moving along, here's Osbaldo. Back to Osbaldo again, our geospatial expert. He's in Alton, Texas, and then he is in Corpus Christi quite a bit, as you see here. So again, let's do the geolocation. It's fun with geolocation. You can find this is, Alton is right on the border, and then Corpus Christi is over here. Now again, the person Devin Stokes is, got a Coast Guard cutter here with the United States Coast Guard, and he's going to the White House again to meet Osbaldo. So are they using this chat application in some way? Is that why he's coming to the White House? He's being summoned the year before. 2016 looks more of a cordial meeting, but this 2015 meeting was more of an emergency meeting. Are they using this chat application? Has it been in use for 15 years? We don't really know, but it makes an interesting, the geo component here, the mapping component, adds a lot to it. And in some sense, this channel here is a slow motion version of geosynchronous or geospatial chat.